How many people have changed their brake fluid? How many of you know that you need to change your brake fluid? If you haven't changed your brake fluid or knew that it should be done, don't feel bad because you're definitely not alone. Nobody talks about changing brake fluid because it's not top of mind in anyone's owner's manual or any online forums or websites or magazine articles. However, the reality of it is brake fluid does need to be changed. You're relying on this fluid to develop hydraulic pressure. That hydraulic pressure is what clamps your brake pads to your rotors and keeps you from ramming into the guy in front of you. See, I've got you thinking you should change your brake fluid. We'll get into the reasons and what to do in this episode of AMSOIL Garage.
This video is brought to you by AMSOIL, the first in synthetics. Visit AMSOIL.com for more information.
Hey everyone, I'm Greg Jones for Engine Builder, and today on AMSOIL Garage, we're discussing brake fluid and the reasons to make sure you change that fluid. Firstly, the viscosity of brake fluid matters, and it can absorb moisture, and moisture is bad for your braking system. If you're doing a brake job yourself, the pads, rotors, calipers, etc., you've got to put brake fluid in because you've got to top off what's lost. But what people don't do, even when they top off what's lost, they don't flush out what's in the line between the master cylinder and the caliper. Now on a 1-ton truck, that distance is roughly 15 feet. There's a decent amount of fluid in there, and by you dropping a caliper out and putting a new one on, and then filling up your master cylinder, you're not flushing out what's in the line. You've just moved what's in the master cylinder, which could be 10 years old, into the line and replaced the master cylinder with new fluid. You didn't help the lines by putting what's in the master cylinder into the line. The brake fluid in the master cylinder could have moisture in there, and that moisture gets in the lines and rots the lines from the inside out. Or it could be older, oxidized fluid and just not the right viscosity anymore. But most of the time, your problem is moisture. The other issue that arises with brake fluid is heat. You put a lot of heat into those calipers from braking. That fluid is designed to take those temperatures for a long time, but eventually over years of repeated hot temperature use, it does degrade and you need to change that fluid out. The act of changing this fluid is not that hard, but it's a process that people are not used to because it's not talked about like oil changes are. And while it's not a hard process, it does help to have a couple people assisting. And with a couple bottles of brake fluid, the job could take 30 minutes for a whole vehicle. So how often should you be changing your brake fluid? Give your braking system the best fluid by flushing it out every 6 years or roughly 60,000 to 90,000 miles. The reality is, on a brand new vehicle, you're probably going to get 70 to 80,000 miles out of the front brake pads and somewhere around 100,000 miles out of the rear brake pads. So by the time you go to pull the calipers, you already have 100,000 miles on your vehicle, and you're more than likely at the end of the life cycle of your brake fluid, if not beyond. If you're not changing the calipers and just replacing the brake pads and rotors, you're going to run that fluid for another X amount of years and another 80,000 miles. Now you're truly well beyond what that fluid is capable of doing and risking further damage to your vehicle. If you do opt to take proper care of your vehicle by replacing the brake fluid, be sure to be liberal with your flushing process. Those brake lines, as I mentioned, can be long and they hold a bunch of fluid. As you're pumping and bleeding that caliper, be liberal with your pumps. Do the job right the first time. A bottle of brake fluid is fairly inexpensive. Buy 3 or 4 of them and just keep pumping it through to ensure you have new fluid in the lines. Okay, hopefully I've convinced you to change your brake fluid. Now the question is, what brake fluid should you buy? Most brake fluids are labeled as .3 or .4 based on temperature requirements. A lot of brake fluids out there are synthetic just because it's a fluid that doesn't get touched very often. That synthetic fluid can take the heat longer so it lasts longer. Then it comes down to how well the fluid manages moisture that can get into the system and help protect the internal components of your braking system from corrosion. That's where AMSOIL focuses, on a fluid that's going to last a long time, maintain viscosity, and protect your system from corrosion from the inside out. AMSOIL has 2 different brake fluids, one that's pretty much for every car on the road under the .3 dashboard, and then a racing brake fluid for applications where you're heavy in the throttle and heavy in brakes all the time. Those folks need a fluid that can manage higher temperatures so they can maintain braking pressure. And while regular drivers might only need to change brake fluid out every 60 to 90,000 miles, racers need to do it even more often. Don't wait until you start experiencing braking problems. In race applications, the brake fluid can get so hot that it actually wants to boil. In that scenario, it will reduce clamp force and you'll experience some brake fade. Don't wait for that to be the case. Be proactive and change the brake fluid. Whether you race your vehicle or just drive it in regular conditions, you spend a lot of money on the other components of your braking system during the life of your vehicle. So don't cheap out on the brake fluid, and be sure to change it and flush out the old fluid when you service your braking system. Well, that does it for this episode of AMSOIL Garage. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Visit AMSOIL.com for all your vehicle's fluid needs, and for more engine content, visit EngineBuilderMag.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.